What's up everyone? Today we're going to talk about summertime deep cranking and some of the little things that I do to help me catch more fish doing that. So it's summertime, and one of my favorite ways to catch fish is by deep cranking. And what that means to me is anything 10 foot or deeper with a deep diving crankbait. It could be all sorts of different brands, but basically you're just grinding that bait into the bottom and trying to get a reaction strike from whether a school or individual fish on cover or anything like that. So today we're going to break down different things that I do to help me get more bites and some of the baits that I use and rods and reels and stuff like that. Starting out, let's kind of talk about the different sizes of crankbaits. So obviously I have a box full of super deep crankbaits, and in my opinion those are like the 8XDs, 10XDs, and then there's some other crankbaits I got in here that'll dive down to 25 feet. So a lot of those baits in here will go from the 20 to 25 feet deep, and some of them are really big. Some of these, like Berkeley has a dredger that's about the same size as a 6XD, but it dives down to 25.5 feet is what it's rated for. So a lot of the other crankbaits that are made by those other companies are huge. Like for example, the 10XD is a lot bigger than that dredger, and the 8XD is also really big. So a lot of these bigger, deeper diving crankbaits are massive, and sometimes you want that, it'll get a bigger bite, but sometimes it'll be sometimes you also want a little smaller profile too. So these two boxes are the ones I use most of the time rather than the super deep ones. I use a lot of times I'll throw a Rapala DT series crankbait or a Strike King 6XD. And you got silent and rattling, so different scenarios, those fish will want different things, but I found that a lot of times the silent tends to work pretty good because it's not as intrusive. I mean, you're already grinding that thing into the rocks and everything, and you're already making a big commotion down there on the bottom. So the silent, it kind of sneaks up on them a little bit more, but either way, they both work and they both have their time and their place. But a lot of times I like to stick with colors that are very natural. Now there's sometimes, if I can get these out, like this is a green gizzard shad that's all wrapped up. There. This is a green gizzard shad, and that's a real natural color, and I have some other real natural colors. This one's not as natural, but it's kind of an in-between one that I like to throw a lot. It's called citrus shad. But then there'll be times on the Tennessee River where a color like this will really trigger a bite, and you'll throw it through the school, and they really there's certain times and certain lakes that really will like that chartreuse with the black back. So obviously a sexy shad or a splatterback or anything like that is always a good color that you can throw. And then I have my DT series. DT Rapalas go from anywhere from 4 feet all the way up to 20 feet. And this box here has 10 to 20 feet in it. And a lot of times, like I said, I like to throw the more natural colors, as well as like a citrus shad or the real bright chartreuse with the blue. So I keep it pretty simple. I have like 3 or 4 colors that I have thrown and I really like. And then I don't really mess around with a whole lot else, but I like to try and keep it simple so that I'm not overcomplicating it whenever I get on the water. The one thing with the Rapalas is they are a little bit more finessey than like the Strike Kings. And the reason for that is that you really can't burn them as fast as a Strike King. So the Strike King, you can really reel through the water faster, and the Rapalas, you can't get them going as fast with the same speed retrieve. So sometimes whenever it's a little calmer or something, I'll throw those Rapalas instead of the Strike Kings, or there's just certain days that they'll like one versus the other. So I usually have one of each tied on. And then there's other brands like Spro and a bunch of other brands out there, and it's really just a preference. I found a couple that I liked, and I just kind of stuck with them. Like I said, I like to keep things as simple as possible. I don't want to overcomplicate it. and make it confusing for me on the day on the water. One thing I do like to do is I like to replace the standard circle O-ring on these things with a oval O-ring. And what that does is it creates a line, it allows my line tie to be perfectly straight. Whereas if it's a circle, I don't know where it's pulling from. I want to keep the oval on there, and it allows my bait to run a lot more true. As far as rod selection, my favorite rod to throw this on is a Lew's XD cranking rod. And this one's actually a 10XD rod that I throw all my 6XDs and my DT 10s or anything. I've actually even thrown like little bitty square bills on this thing, which is kind of surprising. I thought it was going to be too big and it was going to be more for just deep cranking, but I'll throw all my crankbaits on this rod. It's a 7'10" medium heavy action, extra fast tip. It really just works for me. It's really sensitive. I can really launch a bait a long ways with it, and that's really key with deep diving crankbaits. Is you want to make sure you make a long cast, because these things are going to take a little bit to get down, and then they're going to take a little bit to get up. So really the only part of your cast that's really in the strike zone is that middle part, that middle section where it's not diving down and it's not coming back up to the boat. So you want to make sure you can really launch a cast out there, because the farther the cast you make out there, the longer it's going to be staying in that strike zone. So this is the rod I really like for this. It's a long rod. I think that's the key for making long casts, is you really want a long rod. You really want to have a crankbait rod that has a little bit of a tip to it, because whenever you hook them with these treble hooks, you don't want to pull them away from them. And as far as treble hooks, a lot of times I will replace these with like a number 2 or number 4. It depends on the bait. A lot of times the middle of the road, like the 6XD, the DT16, those are going to take size 2 hooks. Some of the bigger ones are going to take a little bigger. Some of like the DT10s might take a 4, but you kind of have to just kind of look at it and see which one looks like the size of the hook that it's using. As far as the reel, a lot of times I'll throw like a BB1 Pro, which is a low gear ratio reel, and that allows you to really get it down there, and it doesn't wear you out throughout the day. One thing I've started doing though is I'll throw it on a little bit of a faster gear ratio. This is a 6/8 to 1, and it allows me to make that bait a little bit more erratic. It kind of wears you out a little bit more throughout the day than say a lower gear ratio, but it allows me to get more of a reaction strike on some of those fish. And what I do when I launch it out there is I'm going to reel it down to the bottom where it gets into that strike zone, and I'm going to want to hit it off of any rock, any stump, any type of cover that those fish might be relating to that I can cause a reaction strike. So what it'll do is it'll be going down and it'll hit off something and it'll jump off to the side, and that's whenever those fish will come up and eat that bait. They might be following it the whole way, but whenever it hits something and it deflects off of it, they're really going to get a reaction strike using that. So that's why a lot of times I'll be cranking it real fast and I'll stop it, crank it real fast, stop it, and that can cause a reaction strike as well. So I never really do a complete steady retrieve with a crankbait, and the reason for that is, like I said, you want to make that erratic action and cause those fish to react to your bait. Another rod that I throw these on, and I've had it for a really long time, is a Powell rod. That's a 7-foot 5-inch medium heavy, and it's also a fast action rod, and it's a glass rod that allows those fish to, whenever I don't know if you can see that or not, whenever those fish bite it, it has a little bit of give to it so that I don't pull those hooks away from them. And I'll have the drag loosen down a little bit, but not like completely loose to where it pulls out whenever I set the hook. I just don't want to pull the hooks or the fish. I don't really want to pull the hooks or the bait away from those fish whenever I do get them to bite. I throw all of my deep diving crankbaits on 10-pound test, and I do that to keep it consistent so that I can get to the same depth every time. So if I throw a 6XD on 10-pound test versus 12-pound test, it'll go to different depths depending on which size line I do. And the reason for that is the drag on the line. And 12-pound test won't get as deep as 10-pound test. So by keeping all of it consistent on all my rods that I'm going to throw a deep diving crankbait on, it allows me to know what depth that bait's getting and I don't have to guess, like, is it only getting 15 feet or is it getting 18 feet? Hopefully these deep diving cranking tips will help you guys out this summer and allow you guys to catch more fish. It's a lot of fun to catch. It catches a lot of big fish. A lot of times when you're throwing into school, it'll really help fire up the school. But I hope you guys enjoy this video, and be sure to like and subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you guys next time.